gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. My name is Reem Barhab. I am an economist at the Policy Center for the New South, and I will be your moderator today. So I hope that you will enjoy the next 75 minutes of conversation, and we are going to be talking about Moroccan-Turkish relations, addressing particularly current issues and future prospects. Before introducing our incredible panel, we will first hear opening speeches by Mrs. Bushra Hmouni, Director of Research, Partnerships and Events of the Policy Center for the New South, and Mr. Ahmed Oysal, Director of the Center for the Middle Eastern Studies. Mrs. Hmouni, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Karim Al-Ainawi, President of the Policy Center for the New South. I welcome all of you to this high-level conference on Moroccan-Turkish relations to highlight current issues and future prospects. I would like to thank our partner, Center for Middle Eastern Studies in Turkey, for their commitment to engage with us in this event and set the stage for a long bilateral cooperation. As a think tank of the South, we strongly believe in such cooperation, especially in light of the prevailing geopolitical context. My special thanks go to Mr. Göktürk Sönmez and Mr. Ramazan Ondulcu, who have been closely collaborating with the PCNS to build the first promising step. This webinar is taking place not only to highlight the bilateral relations between Morocco and Turkey, but also at a time when Africa is seeking innovative partnerships aside from classic economic powers. In this regard, cooperation between think tanks from Morocco and Turkey will definitely contribute to a better understanding and development of bilateral relations in a challenging international economic environment. Please allow me to say a few words about our topic. The economic partnership between Morocco and Turkey dates back to 1982 and has been evolving ever since to meet the shifting requirements of a greater Mediterranean integration. The Moroccan-Turkish Free Trade Agreement was a natural outcome of economic relations deepening. 14 years after the agreement entered into force, the flow of bilateral trade jumped into a new level, rising from $570 million in 2005 to over $3 billion in 2018. And this free trade agreement need to be negotiated and renewed. Increasing Turkish-Moroccan cooperation can entail also a clear, comprehensive, fully fledged strategy in the regional and continental context. Morocco and Turkey can leverage on their respective in-depth knowledge of the African market to deploy a common strategy and propose a development package to the continent that brings new opportunities for all the parties. This opportunity is even greater today, especially with the strategic project related to the African continental free trade area and the current challenging global environment impacted by an unprecedented crisis, COVID-19. So I will stop here and I will give the floor to our panelists whose expertise will for sure shed light on the tremendous opportunities ahead for our two emerging economies and tackle the challenges facing both of them. And I wish all of you a fruitful debate, and the floor is yours, Reem.
Thank you very much. I am now turning to Mr. Oysal for an opening remark. The floor is yours. Can you please unmute yourself? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am also glad to have it. To have all these valuable panelists and also cooperate with the Policy Center for the South, for the New South. Actually, this is an interesting, also important meeting because generally we see relations between northern countries and south. I mean, generally we see north-south relations are more active and dynamic, and we are in the region we are lacking also south-south relations, and especially Turkey and Morocco can be considered as part of global south, not maybe physically, but in terms of capital accumulation and also global power. We are in the same boat, more or less, and we are also connecting eastern and western ends of this. I mean, Mediterranean. This is also an important asset for both countries. One is on the edge of Northeast Africa and also close to Europe. We are also bridging Europe and Asia, and also at the eastern and northeastern end of eastern, I mean, Mediterranean Sea, which is a civilizational sea that notice many civilizations. We have close historical ties. We have similar matters of development and independence and trying to be effective in the region. And I mean, I think also we have the Arab world have several challenges also going together. And I see Turkey and Morocco are progressing on the reformist level, reformist track rather than a revolutionary track, which is also an important similarity. We are progressing in the way of development and democracy, and also effectiveness in the regional affairs, as also both countries are stabilizing force in their neighborhood, more or less. And to have these together, I mean, these assets together, we also have strong historical ties from, after the fall of Andalusia, the Ottoman Empire helped also protect many refugees from the Andalusia, including Muslims and Jews together. Some of them are resettled in North Africa. Some of them are resettled in Morocco. Some of them came to the Ottoman territories also. In 1578, when Sebastian wanted to take over Morocco, also, Ottoman army in Algeria helped to stabilize the country, and even the Jews benefited from that, and they actually remember the Sebastian better than us, because they threatened also Jews to to catch them in Morocco, not only in Indonesia. And we have common background also, as friendly relations from both sides of the Mediterranean. And today we have, I think the South-South trade is very significant. We have similar challenges of youth population and employment and fighting poverty, illiteracy, and many other issues. And also, we have a similar moderate version of Islam, which is not, I mean, especially Sufi tradition is a common asset between the two societies, and common threat that rejects radicalism and violence. So I think also many serious global developments that require more cooperation and also negotiation. And we are glad to start with especially more political and economic side, which is also even with these economic ties are positive even between Turkey and Israel. And also, I mean, economic can be a force to bring countries together, especially between brotherly countries like Turkey and Morocco. So we can, discuss and maybe and find ways to improve these South-South relations, South-South economic cooperation, etc. So we hope that good discussion and good also recommendations come out of this panel. And thank you again, the participants, Dr. Uri, Dr. Burhan, and Dr. Recep, and also the Center for Policy Center for New South, also for their cooperation. And I leave it to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you both very, very much. This is actually the perfect transition for our topic today. So I'm going to take a few minutes first to introduce our panelists before starting on the discussion. So first we are welcoming with us Dr. Yuri Dadouche, who is Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South and non-resident scholar at Bruegel, a Brussels-based think tank. He also teaches courses on globalization and international trade policy at the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic's Public Policy School and at the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland. We also have with us Dr. Burhan Korolu, Associate Professor and Lecturer in the Department of Philosophy at Ibn Khaldun University in Turkey, and Dr. Recep Yorulmaz, Director of Economic Studies at the Center for the Middle Eastern Studies and Assistant Professor at the Yildirim Beyazit University in Ankara, where he teaches public finance in the Faculty of Political Science. So our distinguished panel in the next 75 minutes or so will have what I hope will be a robust discussion about the Moroccan-Turkey relations. As you may already know, and as it has been mentioned before, economic ties between the two countries are not new, and the first partnership framework facilitating trade and economic ties dates back to 1982, and since then both countries have embarked in a series of cooperation agreements. And the focus of our panel today is to contribute to a better understanding of those bilateral economic relations in light of current international challenges and opportunities. I remind all the participants that they can at any time write to us their questions either via the Facebook or YouTube page of this event, and we will forward those to our speakers. So without any further ado, let's hear first from the Moroccan side, and I am inviting Dr. Dadouche to give us his perspective regarding the Moroccan-Turkish economic relations.
Okay, well, thank you very much, William, and I'm delighted to be with you. As I mentioned before to my fellow panelists, I'm based in Washington, D.C., but I consider myself, I don't know, half Moroccan in part because my wife is from Morocco originally, and because I am with the Policy Center for the New South in Rabat since it was founded essentially 5 years ago. And I've done a lot of work on Morocco in various contexts at the World Bank before I joined the think tank. In any event, my perspective is from far away a little bit, as a trade economist. So somebody who believes in international trade. And so although a lot of the focus in the press and among the policymakers is on the disputes between Turkey and Morocco, I look at the economic relationship between Morocco and Turkey as one that in many ways has been highly beneficial to both economies, even though there is a large disparity in both the trade flows and in the size of these economies. So to me, for example, the fact that since the free trade agreement between the two countries was signed, commerce, international trade has grown many times, maybe 5, 6, 7 times what it was, is a very important sign that there are mutual benefits that have been derived from the agreement. So Moroccan consumers have seen access to cheaper and often higher quality goods in many sectors. When I looked at the exports of Turkey to Morocco, and also, by the way, of Morocco to Turkey, which are much smaller, I was surprised at how diverse they are. The trade is really intensive and in many sectors. It isn't concentrated particularly in one sector, although some of the sectors are very sensitive. It's a very diverse trading relationship, which again is a very good sign, because not only consumers have benefited in Morocco, but Moroccan producers have had access to cheaper inputs, whether it's textile fibers or metals and steel, another very sensitive sector. With the agreement, Turkey overcame the asymmetry that is built into its customs union with the European Union, okay, where basically because Morocco has a free trade agreement with the European Union, it has automatically access to the Turkish market, but that is not true in the other direction. And it's one of the important motivations why Turkey got into the agreement. And interestingly, Morocco's interest in getting into the agreement in the first place, even though technically it has access to the Turkish market anyway, was because its textile industry was especially interested in access to Turkish fibers. Now it's a bit of a paradox that the textile and garments industry in Morocco is the most concerned about the bilateral relationships. I should also stress that both countries benefit from the fact that they have access to growing markets. This growth actually is not easily found, unfortunately, in the Mediterranean basin, for the simple reason that the European Union itself is one of the slowest, if not the slowest economy, growing economy in the world. So there's very little growth in the European basin. A lot of the growth is occurring elsewhere. And Morocco, which has, a decent growth rate over a long period, you're looking at 3-4% growth in GDP. And Turkey, which has had, of course, a very volatile growth rate, as we know, but nevertheless a relatively high one. These are very promising situations. Moreover, Morocco has access to the Turkish economy, which has twice the population of Morocco and 4 times the income per capita of Morocco. So actually, these are not exactly the same economies. The Turkish economy is much wealthier, much more advanced in many respects than is the Moroccan economy. Of course, both economies can benefit from the harmonized rules of origin and the accumulation of rules of origin under various Mediterranean agreements to integrate their production structures to be able to address not only the European market, but also potentially where the accumulation of rules of origin has been agreed, but also potentially in the long run, the African market. Turkey, like Morocco, has a very strong interest in Africa as a long-term market opportunity. And as already mentioned by Bushra, the fact that we have the ACFTA now, the possibility of greater integration within Africa should make both parties more interested in collaboration. Let me say a word about the dispute. Just a word on the background. The protectionism that both Turkey and Morocco accuse each other of, unfortunately, has gotten a lot worse around the world in the last 4 years. And I put a lot of the blame, personally, many people will disagree with me, But I put a lot of the blame personally on the United States and the Trump administration and the various policies that it has pursued that undermine the trading system in many ways. Now, we are coming at an end, we have come to an end of the Trump administration, and I expect the Biden administration certainly not to be a soft touch on trade issues, but it'll be much more constructive than has been the Trump administration. The Biden administration will be much more constructive. So that's the background as you go forward to various policies that are being pursued across the world, including in Morocco and in Turkey. The big dispute, of course, fundamentally is over the bilateral trade deficit, which is very large and has gotten larger between Morocco and Turkey. As a trade economist, don't be surprised. You're not surprised if I tell you that we shouldn't overemphasize bilateral trade deficits, that it's very important to look at the total picture of trade. And it is inevitable that you're going to get bilateral trade deficits with some, bilateral trade surpluses with others. Moreover, looking at trade in a narrow way, merchandise trade, is also misleading because, for example, in the case of Morocco, there are many possibilities to earn foreign exchange, and they do, through remittances, which are less important in Turkey. They used to be very important. And through tourism, which is also very important for Turkey, et cetera, et cetera. So looking at just the bilateral trade deficit is a very narrow way of looking at the trade balance. However, both countries accuse each other of all sorts of non-tariff barriers, subsidization in the case of some products exported by Turkey into Morocco. I am not equipped to address that. I don't know. It's very difficult to know who's doing what to whom. I generally assume when these disputes are going on that both parties are guilty of all sorts of non-tariff measures. And I must say that in the case of Morocco, it is not a good sign at all. It's anti-dumping policy towards steel. That's a bad sign. It's also a bad sign for Moroccan trade policy that tariffs are being raised not only against Morocco, not only against Turkey, but also against the MFN tariffs of Morocco have been raised in over the last year or so. In other words, across all parties, with the exception of those with whom Morocco has a bilateral trade agreement. So here, Turkey also stands out in that it is the only partner, as far as I know, which has a bilateral trade agreement with Morocco, against whom Morocco has increased its tariffs. So that's on the Moroccan side. I'm not very encouraged. I'm generally not positive on Moroccan trade policies. And I've written on that in various contexts. I'm very concerned about the direction that Moroccan trade policies are taking. At the same time, Turkey has to recognize that its main exports, some of its main exports to Morocco, which include textiles and garments and steel, are extremely sensitive in Morocco, especially garments, given the effect, given the importance of employment in garments, which is the most important employer in Moroccan manufacturing. Moreover, Turkey has to recognize that Morocco is going through a particularly sensitive period, not only because of its tremendous problems creating jobs, but also because, of course, of the COVID crisis, which has hit Morocco particularly hard, given the effect particularly on tourism. And Morocco has actually seen its exchange rate appreciate in a significant way vis-a-vis Turkey, at least in nominal terms. I haven't looked at the real exchange rate between the two, but I suspect there's been a substantial real exchange rate appreciation of Morocco vis-a-vis Turkey. It's therefore especially important at this point, if we're going to capture the long-term opportunities that are evident in this relationship, that the Turkish side be very vigilant and aware and sensitive to issues like subsidization and non-tariff measures that affect Moroccan exports. I'm also somewhat puzzled, I don't know the full picture, that Turkey has invested so little in Morocco. I mean, Turkey is not going to be a big foreign investor in Morocco under any scenario, just because Turkey only invests abroad, a limited amount, and there are many places where Turkey could go. But it is puzzling that Turkish investment in Morocco is so low, and Moroccans, of course, because of the geopolitical situation, are very, very sensitive to the fact that they see much more Turkish investment, which is small to start with, go into its neighbor Algeria than into Morocco. Again, as a trade economist, I'm not going to make a big deal of this, but I just am communicating to people who are in Turkey or who are interested in Turkey that these sensitivities are real inside Morocco. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Insightful perspective. Now turning to the Turkish side, I invite Dr. Burhan Koroglu for his to share with us his point of view about the same question. Can you please unmute yourself?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for this very kind invitation to be with you. One of my beloved countries, Arabic countries, actually. I always like to be there. Of course, I have studied in Jordan, but I think recently most of my interest was with Morocco because of some reasons. First of all, in my former university, I started first, let's say, direct contact with the Moroccan universities, and we started receiving students from Morocco and also sending our students to study Arabic and other things in Morocco. So it was because of that I always visited Morocco and also received a lot of friends from Morocco. And of course, I have some friends living there, so it's something very personal for me to be a part of, let's say, Moroccan community. Other than that, also I studied in my MA degree Andalusian philosophy. I studied Ibn Bajjah. Of course, I'm not an expert on economic issues. Actually, most of my interest was either on intellectual issues, historical, and also political issues recently. So I just would like to talk from this perspective. As everybody knows, Turkey has recently, especially for the last 20 years, had more interest on Africa, Middle East, and has changed its policy of just one-sided policy of having relations with the European and American. Of course, Turkey returned back to his historical, let's say, background, and also tried to make relations with, with the countries Some of them has been under the control of Ottoman Empire in the last century, but also to the country that Turkey had always good relations in the history. So if we come to Moroccan-Turkish relations, we can find a lot of similarities between two countries, interestingly. Of course, these similarities, I think, make the opportunity of good relations more possible between the two countries. For example, both countries have very strong, a long historical heritage, strong cultural background, like Morocco is a kind of inherited, let's say, Andalusian civilization, or Al-Morawid, Al-Muwahid states. So this background, of course, gives Morocco a big opportunity to extend its relations in the modern times. Also Turkey, from the other side, Turkey has inherited the Seljuk and Ottoman empire's background. So this, for example, one of the similarities. Also, both countries have very strong relationship with the West, with Europe traditionally, from time to time between through wars or through also relations, trade and other cultural relations also. And also we can say that both countries have very dynamic population with considerable young people. Also, these are the things that we can also benefit from them in our future relations. Also, we can add some positive factors which help to the development between the two countries. For example, first of all, two nations are like each other. It is something, let's say, not you can easily see when you, for example, travel to Morocco as a Turkish guy, or you receive Moroccans in Turkey. There is no any sensitivities between two nations. They like each other, in first sight even. And also, of course, the economic and political relations have been developing for the 15 years continuously. As Professor Lee mentioned, when economic relations are growing very fastly. And also, Morocco has achieved success in the, for example, another important thing, the position of two countries from the Arab Spring. After the Arab Spring, maybe Morocco has established a positive example of dealing with the Arab Spring. It has changed its system to cope with the new democratic demands of its people in Morocco, and they could easily cope with the new system. And now there is a government, and also there is a good relation between government and the kingship in Morocco, and we didn't have any problems that occurred in Libya or in, for example, in Syria. So this is very good, sign of relations between Turkey and Morocco, because Turkey, from the very beginning of the Arab Spring, Turkey supported, let's say, democratic changes in the Arab world, because we believe that also Arab world, I think they deserve to have, let's say, democratic governments, free elections, human rights, whatever we have been lacking in our history, because Turkey itself, lived this struggle. We had, like, for example, coup d'etats for the last 50 years, more than 50 years. And just recently, we, tried, even before 4 years, there was an attempt to another coup d'etat in Turkey. So we know the value of democracy, value of free elections. So for that reason, Turkey supported the Arab Springs from the very beginning. Sometimes it has been understood, or let's say, interpreted with some less traditional countries like Saudi Arabia or Emirates, that Turkey is intervening and other states' initial issues, but it is not that. Turkey is supporting any positive development in the Muslim world. That's Turkish position. So for that reason, Turkey supported, very clearly, for example, the elections in Egypt, and for that reason, Turkey is now take a position from the coup d'état made by Sisi in Egypt. From this perspective, Turkish-Moroccan also relations are very positive and very, supportive to each other. And also, I just would like to mention that also, before the Arab Spring, there was the idea that Turkey became a model for the Arab world, because Turkey, overcame the problems of the military interventions and developed its economy, developed its political realm. So now Morocco is, I think, with Tunisia, is also another good example of developing in these issues. So another important issue also I may mention, Turkey is trying to develop its relationships with African countries. And of course, Morocco is one of them. But more than that, Morocco can be a partner for Turkey for its relations in Africa, especially in West Africa, because of historical ties of Morocco with these countries. So, of course, I'm not an expert in the area economy or let's say economic development, but it is easily can be seen that if we can organize a partnership in, for example, trade, in let's say investments in even some kind of industrial developments, I think both countries can gain a lot from this partnership, especially in Africa. Even, for example, in terms of textile industry, Turkey is very much developed in this issue. So Turkey can support Morocco to develop its capacity more to be one of the main actors in Africa, actually. And also, another important thing that I personally interested in is that there is a growing cooperation in the area of education between two countries. I easily can see that there are a lot of Moroccan students coming to Turkey to study. First of all, because studying in Turkey is cheap. Then in Turkey we teach in English. So especially this is French, let's say, Francophone kind of education is not valuable as it was in the future. So Moroccans are trying to, let's say, color their educational system. So they prefer to go other countries, to other European countries other than France, of course, to America. But Turkey is another important partner. Recently, we can see that there's a very growing number of the Moroccan students who study in Turkey, and they develop very strong relations, not just through education, but through the partnership between these young entrepreneurs, actually. I know a lot of Moroccan students, after they study in Turkey, they opened companies in Morocco in dealing with Turkish companies. So that is another chance between two countries to develop their relations more through the educated people between two countries. Another example, for example, traditionally Turkey was always sending their students to study Arabic in Jordan, in in Egypt. But recently we started sending our students to Morocco. Of course, we know that the accent in the street is different than the standard Arabic, but there's a very strong Arabic teaching tradition in Morocco for the foreign students. So we started, for example, visiting Mohammed al-Khamis, Akhawain, or Mondiapolis, sending our students to those universities. So I think this is also, in turn, will be very positive for the future developments between countries. And also, our relations with European unity, European countries, both countries, Turkey from the east and Morocco from the west has relations with European Union, and of course it may help two countries benefit from these relations. And for example, there is of course a very big population, Moroccan population in European countries like Spain, France, Belgium, and also Turkey has very good, strong Turkish population in Europe, in France, in Germany. So there's a chance, especially to cooperate in terms of, for example, Islam in Europe, because we have very, let's say, challenges with having the identity challenges between Turks and Europeans, and also between Moroccans and Europeans. So there's a big opportunity to have this kind of let's say coexistence. By the presence of Mr. Yuri, Turkey and also Morocco had very good, for example, let's say record in the history when the acquisition happened in Spain. Turkey has received, Ottoman state has received a lot of Jewish immigrants, and also Morocco has received Jewish and Muslim immigrants, and they have lived for the last 500 years in peace in those countries. So also this is also a good example of coexistence with the Europeans, because we became we became a global community, so we should reconsider whatever happened in the history. So especially the European approach to Islam in Europe is not very welcoming. Turkey and also Morocco can help each other to, let's say, stand against this kind of Islamophobia, whatever, or anti-Semitism in these countries. And also, for example, there are some regional problems, like what's happening in Libya, for example. Of course, Morocco became a part of the solution, especially through the agreement in Sukhayrat. And Turkey has involved with Libya recently, especially supporting the legitimate Libyan government against that military act by Haftar. Now, of course, there is new chance also for peace in Libya. For example, without the Turkish support of the legitimate government, I think now we were just going to talk with another dictator in Libya. So I think maybe Turkey and Morocco can work on this issue to a better future for Libya or for the region for the coming years. So these are the things that Turkey and Morocco can, I think, work together. Of course, there are some other than these similarities, including intellectual, historical, political, and economical. Of course, there are some challenges. For example, of course, we have problems in our regions. For example, we have a problem of terror in our borders in Syria and Iraq because of unstable states on those areas. So also there are, for example, in terms of Morocco, there are problems in Mali and in Africa. So I think we can also work together and share our experiences to overcome these problems. And another challenge, for example, I already mentioned, but there is the relations between two countries sometimes disturb other countries, like France, for example. They have, of course, France has a colonial history in the region, so they would like to just preserve this kind of relation with these countries, like Morocco, Tunisia, and whatever. But Turkey came to the region as a kind of country to support and to share the benefits, not a colonial country or colonial history. We don't have this kind of history. We have history of mutual interest. So I think these challenges, sometimes we can see easily that, for example, this kind of relations, not just with Morocco, with other countries, it disturb France as a country accustomed to have this colonial interest in Africa. Actually, also it's even for we can see the result of this kind of disturbance even in Eastern Mediterranean. There's another problem. So this is one of my, of course, experience. I know that there's also a kind of strong Francophone lobby in Morocco, who also not very happy with any country, let's say, has an impact on Moroccan politics. So these are the things that we can just talk about, some advantages and some challenges. But the solution, I think, is, of course, extending economic, political, educational, civilizational proximity, closeness between two countries to benefit from experience of and also capacities of both countries. Of course, it needs, of course, a lot of discussion. Maybe we can discuss it within the question and answers part. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I'd like to remind again our audience that they can write to us their questions at any time via our Facebook and YouTube comment sections, so that we can ask those questions to our panelists. So last but not least, Dr. Rajab Firoulmaz, what do you think about what has been discussed so far?
Yeah. In the first place, actually, I'd like to glad to be here. I would like to say I'm glad to be here, and also thanks for the contribution of our beloved participants and contributors. Actually, I was planning to make my speech in three actually different subtitles, like mentioning the evaluation of bilateral economic ties between two countries, and then discussing the well-known and hot topic of free trade agreement between two parties, actually. And then I would like to conclude my speech with the discussion of future prospects of the topic, actually. But already our beloved contributors actually mentioned a bit more about the evaluation of the situation in a historical manner also. And also thanks to Professor Uri, he kind of mentioned more about the international trade issue, which is kind of important in terms of these cases, actually, these specific cases. I'll try to, as a public finance guy, I'll try to give aspects of fiscal policies, actually, in terms of taking the case in terms of fiscal policies, because it's more like both an international trade issue, and also there are many issues in terms of the fiscal policies. We do analyze these topics actually closely at Orsam. Thanks to our team, we've been analyzing many other similar topics actually in the region. Each region we have specific experts, and as a director of economic studies, actually, I'm just actually coordinating this research. Also, we have upcoming visit to Maghreb countries, actually, especially we will be in Morocco soon to prepare a report, sustainable growth, in terms of the topic of sustainable growth soon, hopefully. And I hope we can meet there again. So in terms of the case, actually, the evaluation of the economic ties between two countries actually is not that unlike the historical ties and cultural ties between two countries, two nations. The economic relations actually does not go back in early times, actually, unfortunately, especially after 2002, with the new developments of Turkish policy, actually, as well as the economic policies, both political, both foreign policies, and both also the economic policies in terms of the neighboring countries, actually, in Turkey. This kind of perspective and aspects of looking this foreign policy actually has reshaped. Before these years, actually, in the 1990s, the situation of Turkey, the economic situation, and as well as the political situation, was more like undergone to coalition governments, and at the end of that decade, actually, we faced the kind of more bloody and worst financial crisis in our history, actually, in 2001. And then with the new developments of the political situation in Turkey and the establishment of political stability in the country, actually, the focus on the, especially African countries or Francophone countries, actually has changed. So as an outcome, Turkey started to implement new policies, economic policies and foreign policies in terms of increasing the ties, economic and social ties between such countries. And Morocco, of course, was the first of all, because the first free trade agreement with an African country was with Morocco, actually, with Morocco and Turkey. They signed the free trade agreement, so called, well-known free trade agreement in 2004 with Morocco. Then in 2006, they started to implement the situation. So unlike or despite the recent disputes or critics about this free trade agreement, actually, I would like to give some specific statistics about the achievement of free trade. We can easily say free trade is a good thing, actually, in a simple way. It's not ever, because some critics actually show, especially in Morocco, showed this case a bit kind of, and see this free trade as an evil. But I think it's kind of an interesting argument as an economist, actually. But for the entire population or the entire society, we can say that free trade agreements most of the time is beneficial for your economy, for any country. But unfortunately, in recent years, as Professor Yuri mentioned, actually, in recent years in the world, the economic policies has changed strangely, which reminds us to the times of the era of mercantilist policies, actually. This protectionism and this kind of protective policies kind of reminds us the mercantilist era, which started with the unfortunate Trump administration, unfortunately. So also this topic is kind of combined with other related topics like which they ask, for example, if this is the end of liberal economic policies or liberal economic era or neoclassical era. Even they actually kind of discuss the situation right now, like stakeholder capitalism, etc. And also another arguments are going through, which is about the capital just flees through the East, like China, for example, and also the right now blockchain technology, for example, and today's hot topic again, the hype of the historical hype of cryptocurrencies. Also, they bind this all together. Actually, we called them before futuristics, but now with the new cases, the recent cases in the US actually showed us they may be right. They might be right, actually. If you turn back our topic, the free trade agreement between two countries actually also benefited both sides. How? Let me give you a specific statistic, for example. The bilateral trade actually increased between two countries actually more than 4 times. For example, in terms of Turkey's side, it increased 4.6 times than before after the free trade agreement. But on the other hand, it was not that also result for the Moroccan side. They actually increased their trade, bilateral trade for Turkey, 4.3 times. Unlike their claims about the decrease or shrinkage of the trade side in terms of their benefit, actually, we have also these statistics. And also, we already discussed the situation. Professor Yuri talked about the achievements of the Moroccan side and also the differences between the rationale behind these trade deficits, actually, as the differences between the two countries' economies, actually. But on the other hand, there are kind of other motivations behind these disputes and behind these deficits in the first place. The discussions over these disputes is a bit kind of different in both countries. For example, in Turkish case, the public opinion mostly focused on the political side. Like they mostly discussed the impact of well-known Gulf states actually on this dispute, on this case, specific case. But they missed something else, that this case actually has economic ties and economic motivations behind this. According to me, of course, there are also political impacts like comes from Gulf states, but it's kind of this, its impact a bit limited actually, because there are more economic reasons behind this case. For example, there are also, as I said, two dimensions for this, political and economic. Economical reasons a bit more important, more heavy impacts on this. First of all, two countries actually has similar economic classifications. This is one of the economic reasons actually, because for example, if you check Morocco's economic structure, they are good at actually their agriculture sector, for example, one of the most important sector, leading sector in their economies. And also mining industry is another important sector that trigger their economic development. And on the other hand, in order to kind of diversify their economic classifications, economic diversification, they would like to give more attention, for example, automotive sector and services sector, which are Turkey has really good positions actually. Turkey is really good at these sectors like automotive and services sector. Of course, services sector takes more than 56% of Turkish GNI, I guess. So this makes two countries actually as rival competitors. And also the goods of the disputed goods that we are now criticizing in both the sides actually are the substitute goods for both countries actually. They are kind of a substitute for each other. So that's why I can understand the Moroccan side actually, they are right on that manner because those goods actually are substitute for each other. For example, the textile sector. They are trying to grow in textile industry, but Turkey has more advantage on this. So of course, the first reaction of this sector actually like just abandon the free trade agreement that they see as an evil. Another issue that this kind of became, this situation, this case became kind of a challenges of market competition in terms of these specific sectors. So we need to take the case actually under these discussions, under these topics of specific topics of discussion, because this is the real motivation behind this dispute. If you take this, we can find a better and common solution. The economic ties actually between two countries peaked high kind of in 2016. Even during that dates, that specific days, the kind of anti-dumping situation started actually from the Moroccan side. It started with the hot rolled steel, I guess. They kind of imposed new duties of 11%, I guess. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's like 11% anti-dumping duty. It started with this. Then during the 2017, the first case started with the well-known Turkish textile company, LC Waikiki. It became the symbol of this dispute of that time. So textile industry kind of the other companies on textile industry actually start to more concerned about this industry and this impact of these Turkish companies actually, existence of Turkish companies. Then after 1 year actually they kind of solved the situation, hopefully, and luckily the negotiation gate is always open between two parties. So we can easily say this because ministers from both sides actually can make a sudden visits to solve the problems, because, so they are open to any negotiations. So we are lucky on this. After 2018, when we actually achieved today's well-known to 2020, the year of the evil cases, before the COVID pandemic actually, another issue just occurred in between two countries. This time, the discount grocery sector actually kind of became the symbol of this new dispute. BIM, the sector of the kind of one of the leading sector in the grocery industry, is kind of common in Turkey also. The symbol of this dispute was BIM. It was kind of funny for us because we have many jokes about BIM and its plastic bags, etc. But I'm kind of also see this as interesting because we are now discussing the impact of BIM's products on Moroccan economy, and also we are kind of now discussing the impact of just one single sector's impact on bilateral economic ties, actually, because it's not feasible. It is neither economically feasible and nor politically correct, actually, because the share in this sector actually is not that much effective in both countries, actually, both countries' shares in their GNI. The case is that actually they blamed BIM as they do not sell the products of the domestic products in their stores, and then actually BIM made a kind of statement that they use 85% of domestic products, and also they sell 35% of their share to a UK-based company in order to attain their localization. So they are also making some steps over this. So in short, kind of they made another agreement lately between two parties, and hopefully they will kind of find a solution to get benefit for both sides, actually. So I won't take much time, and I would like to conclude my speech as the prospects of future relations. I understand the aspects of Moroccan side, the direct investment share of Turkey in that country is less than 1%, which is not also desirable level for both sides, since we have strong historical ties with Morocco and Moroccan people. We have to increase, Turkey has to increase its share, direct investment share in that country, even though they don't get much benefit, actually. It's my perspective. And it's also Turkish people's perspective, I can easily say. We do see these efforts from Turkish side, the policymakers. I'm just a humble researcher, economist, but policymakers, I believe that they will they will agree on this situation to increase the direct investment levels, because we do witness the increasing investment levels of China. They are building new railways, and also the already existing investment levels of European Union. So as Turkey, we need to increase our boundaries, our ties, by increasing direct investment into that country, into beloved Morocco. Thanks to having me today.
Thank you very much. So we can now open the discussion with our audience, and we have 5 to 10 minutes to answer their questions. So based on the comments and questions that we have received so far, many seems to agree with our panelists in the fact that trade policy is now going the wrong way, particularly with rising protectionism. So one of the participants says that Turkey and Morocco have agreed to review and revise the terms of their current free trade agreement in January of last year in a bid to ensure it is fit for purpose for both nations. So the question is there any new developments on this file since then? And this joins another questions of another participant who asks, what are the limits of the development of relations between Morocco and Turkey? So these questions are not directed to a particular panelist, so feel free to jump in if you'd like to answer.
For the development side, if you allow me, I will start with the first part.
Sure.
Thank you. For the development sides, as far as I know, under the limits of my knowledge, on August, actually, they made a new agreement between two parties, Alami and Pekcan, the ministers actually, had agreed on the new terms in terms of the requirements by the Moroccan side. And as far as I know, Turkish side actually also agreed upon, and they kind of made a common point actually to make a win-win situation, actually, to create a win-win situation. We are happy about this. As far as I said, as we mentioned before, also Turkey also seeks to get more benefit for the Moroccan side as well. So we can always open to make amendments or make revised revisions for in this free trade agreement. But again, the share in this, the impact of this agreement for both countries actually is not much. For example, they mention about $2 billion of trade deficit in terms of Moroccan side. Also, this is kind of a difference because in Turkish database, the released database from Turkish side actually it is $1.6 billion, by the way. And there is a difference between two parties, the released databases. But anyway, it's a deficit after all. We are not happy about it, of course, but of course it is kind of a beneficial side for Turkish side, beneficial situation for Turkish side. But of course, they always also declare this, political policymakers. I'm talking about myself, actually, I'm again humble researcher, but also policymakers kind of declared the situation since we have strong ties, strong historical, cultural ties between two parties, actually. Luckily, they kind of opened to any negotiations in time. And again, the answer of the question, on August 18 or something, I guess, they made agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sure.
I mean, it's something about the limits of cooperation between two countries. Actually, it can be easily extended to big amounts because, as far as I remember, there were an agreement between two countries in terms of credits from the Exim Bank of Turkey for 5 years. It was almost $500 million, but actually it didn't started just because of, maybe Turkey, for example, contacted the Moroccan side in this issue. Even recently, before 6 months, there was a letter from President of Turkey, Erdogan, to the King of Morocco about starting inviting him to Turkey, and also from his side, his Majesty invited the president. I think politically, because of the tensions in the region, also after that, of course, because of the pandemic, these, let's say, visits didn't start. For example, if we can just, activate this Exim Bank credit from the Turkish side, through a visit from the president of Turkey to Morocco, then it needs just, as I said, I'm not an expert, but it's just some kind of political push from both sides to start this kind of mutual projects easily in terms of mining, textile, and also even some development projects, and especially as Dr. Recep mentioned, the issue of producing spare parts of the cars. Turkey has a very strong experience here, and why not to establish a factory in Morocco in this issue? But it all needs a kind of political push from both sides. In this case, I just would like to mention again that there are some lobbyists in the Moroccan side that doesn't allow this kind of, let's say, dynamic relations. Hopefully we can, overcome these problems as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Another participant asks, what are the prospects for Moroccan-Turkish relations after President Erdogan's recent speech, where he states that his country is ready to put its relationship with the European Union back on track? And this is related to another question of a participant that asks, does Turkey's trade rivalry with the EU affect Morocco Moroccan-Turkish trade relations?
Okay.
I may respond to the first one, and the economic
Sure.
side, maybe Dr. Recep. I think the Turkey's relations with the EU is, is an old one, and we have cooperation on many fields, many also standardization. Even European Union accession talks helped Turkey to democratize, even though they now doesn't, they don't help a lot, but the relations are there and strong, and of course there are some crisis countries like Greece. They want to use the European Union against Turkey, and France joined them for a while. Now looks like things are calming down, and of course these are as a major power, the European Union is important, but I don't see a trade problem with Europe. Maybe Dr. Recep, he can evaluate on that better. I don't see a rivalry, but of course you live in a competitive environment. Everybody is competing with everyone, but I don't know. Dr. Recep?
The strong ties, potential strong ties with Turkey and the EU actually will also impact the trade of Morocco. It will also beneficial for Morocco because with the free trade, because thanks to the free trade agreement between two parties actually, Morocco will also benefit of these good relations, increasing developing good relations between Turkey and Europe inside. Of course, as Professor Ünsal mentioned about the rivalry situation in the EU actually, which is we talk about France, of course. Also, the France case, the impact of France also is the case for even BIM in the grocery market sector in Morocco actually, because of the share of Carrefour actually started to decrease after increasing of influence of BIM's share in the market actually. There are many other political issues, but I'm an economist, so we don't dig into that topics. But simply answer of this question, of course, it will be more beneficial, very beneficial too, because they will benefit of Turkey's free duty opportunities to sell their products to European Union through Turkey. So it's kind of a beneficial situation for them. Also, another thing I must add, in terms of these fiscal policies, these protective fiscal policies actually, and the duties, they are kind of a dangerous situation. As a US, as a country of US, if your money is a reserve money, you can do such madness actually. I'm sorry for my language, but the Trump administration actually just doing the madness actually. They did the madness. They started trade wars between other huge powers actually in the world. So it kind of draw us the mercantilist era. That's why I mentioned about this mercantilist situation. So in terms of a country like Morocco actually, imposing more tax or increasing tax duties actually, especially violating the GTTA rules, also violating the international trade rules actually will also harm their economy mostly. Even U.S. economy just affected by their ineffective or unexpected policies, aggressive policies. In terms of the fiscal policy, as a public finance guy, I must say the Turkish goods actually are competitive in the market. Even you know better than me actually, the Medina stores, for example, people are mostly just eager to buy Turkish products as well as the Moroccan products and also Chinese products. They are rivaling. And the low segments and middle segment classes in the country just mostly focus on or choose this kind of goods. Also, there is a perception in the country as they see that Turkish goods are most of the time better than domestic goods. So you cannot directly wipe out this kind of perceptions with using fiscal policies, kind of aggressive fiscal policies as a government. So it is not a feasible fiscal policy tool, government policy tool actually for this. In the long term especially, it will harm your economy more than Turkey. So as a friend, actually, we are just giving advice, our humble advices. So before going right directions, actually, and hopefully there are many ways, open gates to negotiations and discussions between the policymakers. Actually, we should be happy, and I think they will turn back these wrong policies. And also, this kind of creates, lastly, I can say, this kind of policies will create more informal economy in the country, because, or shuttle trade, for example, it increased shuttle trade, which also increase the chance of the informal economy, and also this would reduce the tax effort in the country. So I should mention this, and thank you.
Thank you all very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but it's a discussion I know that many people are having right now, and I certainly hope that we can continue the conversation beyond this webinar. Again, I want to take a minute to thank all the panelists, Dr. Yuri Dadush, Dr. Burhan Korulu, and Dr. Recep Yorulmaz. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.